So welcome. Wanted to do a little bit of an introduction to my session this morning with a guest who I've very much enjoyed speaking to so far. I think he's got a really good story to share with people. But just to give a little bit of an overview. So today we're living through a period of extraordinary political, economic, and social turbulence. Around the world, people are questioning whether their government are acting in the public interest or drifting toward decisions that weaken national sovereignty, reduce civil liberties, and concentrate power in the hands of a small number of private and geopolitical actors. At the centre of these debates is the growing influence of public-private partnerships in the digital age. While often presented as innovative solutions, many critics warn that they can blur the lines of accountability, create conflicts of interest, and expose citizens to new forms of surveillance, economic exploitation, and governmental overreach. Against this backdrop, concerns about government transparency, ethical governance, the use of public funds, and the human impact of foreign and domestic policy decisions are becoming increasingly urgent. Around the world, people are raising alarms about actions they perceive as harmful, unjust, or inconsistent with international law, and calling for stronger oversight, accountability, and public empowerment. My guest today has been one of the most vocal and persistent advocates on the topic of no tax for war. Through a combination of activism, strategic pressure, campaigns, and public education, he has worked to shine a light on what he sees as unethical, immoral, and unlawful conduct carried out under the banner of government authority, and often funded by taxpayers themselves. His work focuses on empowering citizens, challenging systems of power, and defending fundamental rights at a time when many feel these rights are under significant threat. Chris, welcome.
Gosh, wow. Thank you very much, Gary. That's great.
Pleasure. It would be great for you just to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself, but about your journey that brought you into this work that you're doing now. I'm sure everybody will be would love to hear a bit more about that.
Okay, yes, right. Well, very briefly then, I spent my early life as a organization development consultant, running an international consultancy firm, which I lost to fraud and various other uh, firms at the same time. And I started investigating fraud and corruption in government and industry and business in this country in 1998. And for 4 years, I looked into large FT 100 companies, what was going on in the boardrooms, and also 6 or 7 government departments. In 2002, I was looking at corruption in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and I discovered that the British people had been conned or deceived for over 70 years over the illegality of war. This is when we had just started the Afghanistan war and we were about to start the war with Iraq. And so I started to look into what the law said. Now, myself and 3 colleagues took a case to the High Court to try and get an injunction to stop Tony Blair and the cabinet from going ahead with the Iraq War. But unfortunately, that didn't work. So we then adopted a number of other things to try to. I certainly went into trying to report war crimes to the police, and because it was against the law and so on. This was all based on research I'd done into the laws of war. And we had been told by our government just before the Iraq War started that it would be legal, and it had been authorized by the UN Security Council under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter. Anyway, I discovered to my horror that this was completely false. It, Waging war has never been lawful since 1928 when we signed the Kellogg-Briand Pact after the First World War. And additionally, since we signed the UN Charter, we had agreed in 1945 never to threaten or to use force and to settle all disputes peacefully. Now, we hadn't done that once in the years following the Second World War. Recently discovered that, in fact, we've fought 84 illegal wars between 1945 and today. And that is just utterly appalling because we have murdered in those illegal wars somewhere between 8 and 10 million people, a third of whom are children. So it's when I started to discover the illegality and the outcomes of our supposed interventions into other people's countries, I felt I've got to do something about this. And so I started a number of campaigns to try and stop what was going on. And that really led me into what I'm doing now, which is really focusing on the underlying issue, which is the tax rebellion and the importance of not paying the government to commit crimes in our name. So broadly, that's it.
It's a great introduction, and I think will be very compelling for a lot of people. I'm sure most good people will resonate with your words, and I think the work that you're doing is fantastic because I think there's a lot of people that really have got a burning desire inside them to do something positive to try to shift the world in a better direction, but they just don't know how to do that. They almost feel like the government is unresponsive to any types of uh, I guess, strategies that have been tried in the past. Protesting
Yeah.
has not really had the desired effect. It maybe has some sort of smaller level positive effects with uniting people and getting people introduced and giving a feeling that we can actually do something when we all come together, but it doesn't tend to have the desired effect. Now, this is what
Absolutely.
really got me interested in your work because I feel that what you're doing here has got great potential to actually get the government to sit up and take notice of what's going on.
Absolutely, Gary. Yes. The I learned that lesson early on. I was on the big Iraq War anti-war march in
Mm,
February 2003,
mm,
and various other marches and demonstrations. But I realized that marching, demonstrating, protesting, petitioning the government has absolutely no effect at all on government policy. They are being steered from elsewhere and ignore us completely, uh, except when it comes to elections, and they make false promises that they never keep
yeah, yeah,
to try and
absolutely.
tell us that we are a democracy, which is completely wrong.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I think the lesson I learned was when, excuse me, when I was reading the International Criminal Court Act. Now, this is the most modern war law that the country has signed up to. The world set up the International Criminal Court in The Hague in 1998, and we agreed to that. And it doesn't become effective in Britain or other countries until each country has ratified the international convention. Now, ratification means
I think we've just lost Chris for a moment. Hopefully, he will rejoin us. So, welcome back, Chris. We can continue after that brief disruption.
thank you very much, Gary. Yes, now I was talking about the International Criminal Court Act, which is the ratification of the international statute. And the International Criminal Court Act is different for England and Wales and a separate one for Scotland. So it is important that the one that's relevant in Scotland is the International Criminal Court Scotland Act 2001. Now, this makes it a criminal offence in this country to commit war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide, and conduct ancillary to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. So, six of the most important criminal offences it is possible to commit. And this became law in 2001. And within 5 weeks of passing the law, we started the war with Afghanistan, October the 7th, I think it was, and broke that law. Our leaders broke the laws. They had just passed the world's most important laws against committing genocide. Now, the definition of genocide in the legislation applies to warfare as well. It's all about killing people because of who they are, not because they've done anything to you or they've committed an offense or anything like that, or attacked us or anything else. When we go to war with a nation state and bomb and kill their citizens, we're killing them because of who they are. They're Afghans or Iraqis and living peacefully in Iraq or Afghanistan. And by bombing and killing them and injuring them in hundreds of thousands, we are committing genocide,
Mm. And this
which is the
came,
worst crime known to mankind.
sorry for interrupting there, this obviously came on the backdrop of 9/11,
It
which
did.
was the pretext for allowing the troops to go into these countries and to essentially start a number of years of warfare in these areas of the world. But also we now know through really good investigative journalism that the story that we were given, the official story around 9/11 doesn't really stack up, does it?
Absolutely not. I mean, we now know that it was an inside job, I think, was the
Mm.
word that's put it. I won't go into more detail on it now, otherwise you'll probably get cut off. But yes, that was the problem, and it was all a lie. And our government took us to war, started murdering men, women, and children, and has been doing so ever since. We have now fought since 2001, or fought or supported 8 wars in Afghanistan, Iraq. Then David Cameron took us into Libya, and then into Syria. And since then, we've been supporting wars in the Ukraine, the Lebanon, the Yemen, and worst of all, in Palestine at Gaza.
Mm.
All of this killing and murdering is in law crimes of genocide and crimes against humanity. We have to do something about it. And so that's really what stimulated me is to say there is no way that I will ever do anything to support this sort of horrendous behavior.
Mm.
Now, while I was looking at the law, conduct ancillary to genocide is anything to do with aiding and abetting, or in Scottish law, being art or part of the crime. And I realized that anybody who pays tax is funding these crimes. And that's the crucial issue. Every time I pay VAT, I buy a cup of coffee or something and pay VAT, I know that that money goes straight to the government. And say if it's £2 or whatever it is, pound, I know that every penny of tax I pay goes into the government's pot in Westminster, and that includes every penny of tax paid by people in Scotland, nearly every penny. There are one or two minor exceptions. Goes into the consolidated fund, and out of the consolidated fund, the government use 10 to 15% of that money for waging war, past wars, current wars, and future wars, and planning future wars.
Mm.
And so if I pay £1 in VAT, I know that 10p is going to go to the mass murder of more men, women, and children. And it's the children, particularly, that.
Welcome back. After another short disturbance, we've got Chris back. So yeah, let's keep going. We're talking a bit about the tax money and how that can be used to fund uh, unlawful warfare.
Yes, people don't really know just how much we are paying every year, every taxpayer, for warfare and armed conflict and mass murder and genocide. Um, I've been looking into the details of it, and although they tell us that they spent 60 billion last year, I think, on defense, so-called defense, that doesn't cover all sorts of other expenses like Trident and aspects of, and the money we borrowed in the past, which we are repaying and paying interest on to fight earlier wars. So in total, we can say it's at least 10% of everybody's taxes and possibly 15% in some years. So looking at it and what we've done, I mean, I did a quick calculation of how much money we had spent on so-called defense, in fact, on offense and offensive wars and illegal, unlawful warfare since 2001, the 9/11 event, as you mentioned. And it's approximately £22,500 per British taxpayer has gone into warfare and mass murder. So we know that in any one year, the government raises about £1 trillion in taxes from about 50 million adults in the UK. And if you divide 50 million into a trillion, that is £20,000 each every adult taxpayer per year in taxes. Now, of course, people don't realize it's quite so much, but the issue is that it's mostly comes from indirect means and not direct. You know, we pay large council tax and we see that going out, but we don't realize that every time we buy petrol or we buy an item that has VAT on it or all the other taxes that are going on in the country, all of that is accumulating in the government's consolidated fund, and it takes approximately an average of £20,000 per taxpayer. That's a horrific amount.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I discovered that, I said, right, I'm not going to pay this. And there's no way I'm going to contribute to mass murder and genocide. And so I stopped paying tax in 2003, council tax. And for 10 years, that was not too difficult. I avoided paying the tax. They took me around various courts. They tried to get the bailiffs on me and various things in London. And it didn't get to be a big problem until I moved to Rye in Sussex when I did some research into the corruption in the local council and Rye Town Council and various other things that were going on, including with my MP, who was Amber Rudd, who was the Home Secretary eventually. And the more I looked, the more I discovered that there was crimes going on everywhere. And so I did a report for the Rye Town Council and Rother District Council on 7, 8 crimes that were taking place, including a £32 million fraud by the council itself. Anyway, as a result of all of that, eventually they took me to court for non-payment of council tax and sent me to prison. 3 years in a row, actually. And so
How long did you spend there each time?
well, it was one day on the first time. The chap who took me to court was so horrified that he bailed me out straight away. So I spent a day in the cells under the court. Then the second time, it was 42 days. in Lewis and Ford prison. And then the third time it was 8 days, and I was bailed out again by my son.
Mm.
But it was 51 days in total after 98 days sentences. So I discovered then that I really have to find a different way around. This is crazy,
Mm.
getting sent to prison every year.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell
so
me, tell me briefly about your experience of being in prison, and what were your kind of most striking memories of that?
well, first of all, it's there's a difference between criminal and civil imprisonment. There's only one issue on which you can get sent to prison if you are a debtor, if you like, and that's for council tax. And debtor's prison is very different from criminal prison. So the prison has to keep you separate from the criminals in case they influence you.
Mm.
Crazy idea, but anyway. But unfortunately, the prisons are so overcrowded that the only cell they had for me in Lewis was had been taken out of commission. It was in such poor shape, and it was going to get refurbished, but they shoved me in there for a few days. I caused so much problems that they eventually sent me off to Ford, the open prison, which was different
Mm.
and much easier. It
Yeah.
was 23 hours a day lockdown in Lewis, which is a ghastly prison and
Mm.
not good. However, I was lucky in a way because I had been sent at the age of 8 to a public boarding school and
Mm.
spent 10 years there. And so I was quite used to it. And I found that perhaps prison was slightly easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine. I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah. And
Anyway, so,
yeah. And you probably thinking, what did I do to deserve all of this?
sorry?
What you've probably been thinking, what did I do to deserve all of this?
Yes, well, I was lucky. I mean, I realized that had been stirring the pot for ages, not just since 2003, but back in 1979, 1980, around about that time, I became an anti-war activist,
Mm.
working with CND and so on. So I was quite used to it.
Yeah.
I think the key thing for me out of it was that it gave me time to think and rethink and do a lot of private research and writing that was really very useful period of time. So when I came out, I was in a better position to understand what had been going on and how I could tackle it differently.
Yeah.
And I therefore developed a different strategy that not only included uh, reporting war crimes to the police and tax, but also
So welcome back. We continue the interview with Chris. It's fair
thank
to
you.
say that we've had a few disturbances on the call today, but we are persevering. We're going to keep going. So back to you, Chris. I think we were starting to talk about the strategy, the one that has been yeah, much more robust and fruitful.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, the important bit was that I realized when I was in prison that I really needed a different approach that was safe and wouldn't send me back to prison again. Now, thinking about the way our leaders, the top 100,000 people in this country, they hide their money, make lots of money, hide it overseas in tax havens in trust. And I realized that perhaps that's what we can do in this country. We can set up trusts for all our taxes. So that's what I did. I had a chat with a lawyer, a trust lawyer, who has experienced in helping people hide money overseas, and he helped me to put together a trust document, deed of trust, for my taxes. And I had a go at that, and for 4 years, I stopped. I used a taxation trust deed to stop paying taxes and any other taxes that I was asked to pay. And really, in that 4 years, I improved it and developed it and so on. And to the point at which I realized I've now got a system that is working well and can be passed on to other people. So I started to pass it on to others. And we now have about 1,000 people or more uh, operating individual taxation trusts. And we have a different one for Scotland, as I say, and one for England and Wales. And there is some talk about getting a separate one for Northern Ireland, but I also have one for New Zealand and one for Australia and so as well. So it's appropriate wherever a government is using a taxpayer's money for criminal purposes. And then this is a way of ensuring that entirely lawfully you can withhold tax on condition that the government, they can have the money, but only if they act entirely lawfully and never for criminal, use it for criminal purposes. So that's the fundamental design behind a taxation trust is to put a condition on it. Now, it's very similar to signing a will or something like that. You
Mm,
make a will for your grandchildren and you say, my grandson can have 100 grand or whatever it is of my money after I've died if he doesn't marry his current girlfriend and if he joins the family firm.
mm,
Now, what happens in that situation is your trustees, your look after those affairs for you after you've died, and of course your grandson, if he goes away and marries Sally or whoever it is, and doesn't join the family firm, then he won't get the money, and the money goes to the secondary beneficiaries in the will.
yeah, yeah.
Now, exactly the same process happens with taxes. What I do is I put the taxes in trust for the government and the councils and the DVLA and all the other people who are asking me for money, written into the trust deed, and say, well, look, yes, of course you can have the money if you meet my conditions. And I put down 5 conditions that are pretty tough. Those conditions are, for instance, we stop the killing and the wars, and we withdraw all our troops back to the UK and aircraft and navy and everything else. That's just one thing, and we start to uphold the law. We uphold the UN Charter and the UN Declaration on Principles of International Law. A third condition is that we prosecute those leaders who have deceived us and taken us to war and committed genocide and mass murder. Another one is not only the leaders who've committed the war, like Tony Blair and Boris Johnson and others, but also taxpayers, the company directors and others who are paying huge amounts of money to the government every year and thus aiding and abetting genocide. And lastly, a condition is that I'm given immunity from prosecution for any of these events of paying money to a government or not paying money to a government so that they can't prosecute me. So if I get a promise from the High Court saying that I won't be prosecuted, immunity from prosecution, basically.
Yeah.
So I put those conditions down. Now, obviously, if the government meets all those conditions, then they can have the money. If they don't, then the money goes to the secondary beneficiary. Now,
Yeah.
the secondary beneficiary can be you.
Mm,
You can get all the money back that you have paid in taxes, and then you can choose what you want to put that money towards. It's not just a man to go overseas for a long holiday, although you might need it.
yeah.
But we need to support good community activities, health and education and all the other things
Yeah.
locally. And so,
So
that's,
this is
but
a
it's up to you to choose that, not up to the government to tell you what they're going to do with your money.
yeah. I mean, I think it's genius. I think what you've done here is fantastic because it really does. really does nail them to the mast in terms of that,
Yes.
you've got nowhere to go. You have to meet these conditions. It's protected under law, and if you don't, then as you say, the money goes to the secondary beneficiary. Now, just on that point, you
Yeah.
said there that that can be that can be you as the secondary beneficiary, and is it just that you are the named individual, so it's just it's literally just your name. It doesn't have to be a cooperative community trust, for example, that the money's going into. That's something that you could just make a moral choice on to want to do that, so that you can maybe collaborate with people in your community who want to do the same thing. They maybe have the same sort of values and principles. They want to follow the same approach, and gradually that money can start to accumulate in the cooperative community trust, so that it can be utilized for the good of the community, things that can actually enhance the community, and we know where the money's going, rather than it going into a consolidated pot where it can be misused.
Yes, that's absolutely. That's I find most important. There's two types of trusts now. A corporate trust as well as an individual trust. Now, the one I've been talking about is the individual one that applies to every individual citizen, if you like. And you can set those up separately and do what you like with the money. And it doesn't have to be you to be the secondary beneficiary. You can decide to, as I have decided, for instance, to put some of my money into a local home education unit in Sussex, Hope, Sussex, and a local natural health outfit and various other things. So that
Fantastic.
choice is mine as an individual.
Mhm.
However, there is a big problem in this country that 92, 93% of all taxes are raised through businesses, through VAT, PAYE, national insurance, and then through accountants in inheritance tax or estate agents in stamp duty and so on. It's those pots of money that are causing the real problems. If
Mhm.
we do it as individuals, just as individuals, then we may be able to stop 8% of the government's income at the very most. But that's not enough. We
Yeah,
have to do it with the whole business community as well.
yeah.
So what we've done is set up corporate trusts where employees or others can say, look, I don't want my PAYE taken out anymore, national insurance and so on, going to the government, but you are taking it from my salary before I have any say at all. Now that is unfortunately the law is that it is up to the managers or directors of the business to deduct PAYE and national insurance and hand it straight to the revenue and customs. Now, what we need to do is to say, look, in doing that, you are committing, as a company director, you are committing a very serious criminal offence of conduct ancillary to genocide by handing money to the government, knowing that it will be used partially, in part, for mass murder and genocide. And that is a criminal offence for which you could be put in prison for 30 years under both the Scottish and English and Welsh legislation. So we need to persuade company directors to be responsible and to set up corporate trusts on behalf of employees, clients, and customers, if you like, and shareholders. And that's what we have available now is a corporate trust that a company can set up with the same time scale to the end of the year. So the individual one runs through to the end of the tax year in England and Wales. I think that, and maybe Scotland the same, is April the 5th is the end of the tax year. And we that at that time the individual trust ends. Now, exactly the same with the corporate trust, except that it is to the last day of that business's annual year, if you like,
Mm.
tax year.
Yeah.
And what happens is that they withhold the PAYE, they withhold the national insurance contribution, and they withhold the corporation taxes and other things and put it all into a separate, two or three separate accounts. And at the end of the tax year, if the government has not met the conditions that the trust is based on, then the money goes back to the people who they took it from in the first place. So, for instance, the employees get all the PAYE and national insurance that they paid during the year
Mm.
back,
Yeah.
as do the clients get back the VAT if they want to. But now that's going to be complicated because you can't really go back to every person who has paid VAT. So what we'll need to do for these is to reduce the prices for in future by the amount that we save,
Right.
so
So,
that
so,
clients
so
get.
deducting the VAT at source then,
Yes,
so that the
correct,
individuals are not actually paying it in the first place.
correct.
And one point to pick up on, Chris, is that, or two actually. The
Yeah,
first is that you said that as an individual or a director on behalf of a business, if you're paying that money, you're paying those taxes, you are actually committing a crime. You
yes,
are under international law, you're committing a crime. Uh,
both international and Scottish law.
okay. And and the thing here that is I guess, and then we look at the way that the system is built. The system is not built in a way to actually prosecute people for that kind of an offence. The way the system is built is to prosecute people that aren't paying their taxes for whatever reason. And therefore, we know that it's upside down. It doesn't uphold the law. And so where is the deterrent then to hold people to this more kind of honest and moral um, uh, um, action by not paying into that consolidated fund that the government gets? How can we actually say to them, you could legitimately be taken through the courts and prosecuted because of what you're doing is unlawful?
Yeah, it's a very important question, Gary. Yeah, there's two things. I've talked about the International Criminal Court Act for Scotland and England and Wales, and the offence under Section 2 in the Scottish law and Section 52 in the English and Welsh law it is an offence of conduct ancillary to genocide to aid and abet genocide, and that includes paying the money. So it is written into the criminal law of England and Wales.
Yeah. And you've had that
But
ratified. Have you had
that,
you've had
that
that ratified by a lawyer?
well, that was ratified by Parliament. And the point about it is that it's written into the legislation. So there is a law which makes it absolutely clear. So if you go to Article 2 of the International Criminal Court Scotland Act 2001, there it is in black and white, a criminal offence that the police are bound by law to investigate, and the prosecution to prosecute. So it is there in law, and as you said, the system is built not to do these things. In fact, the system is built to do these things, but they are not applying the agreed system.
Yeah.
Police are not doing their job at all, and the
Yeah.
Crown Prosecution Service are not doing their job in England
Yeah.
and Wales.
Yeah. In a variety of different ways, I would suggest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Numerous
Yeah.
ways.
Well, they're essentially protecting the criminality of the state.
Yes.
And that's what they're set up to do. They're there to actually protect the status quo rather
Well,
than
they're not set
actually,
up to do it. That's what they are doing.
yes. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but they're set up to do the opposite.
Yeah.
They're set up to prevent crime, but in fact, they are committing crime.
They are. And is there then an approach where we can, actually prove to them that they are committing crimes. They're supposed to be preventing crime
Yeah.
and solving crime, but actually what they're doing is they're actually aiding and abetting, which means that they are also falling under this section 2 in the Scottish law, where they are actually aiding and abetting, and therefore we should be seeking to put them on notice of the
Absolutely.
crimes that they are facilitating.
Well, putting someone on notice, that's a civil offence.
Right? Okay.
If somebody commits a criminal offence against the Scottish law, then it's the job of the police. And so what we need to do is to say, right, we report this to the police. Now, we started to do that, myself and my colleagues, back in 2005, started reporting war crimes, crimes against humanity and genocide to the police committed by our leaders. Now, we reported that over 300 times to every police force in Britain, including, I think at that time there were 4 or 5 Scottish police forces. Now it's all in one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, and by reporting it, you get the process hopefully started. But of course, the police, there's corruption in the police in a big way. What I found was that there was an organization in Britain called ACPO, the Association of Chief Police Officers, and they were manipulating things from behind the scenes. And although 1 or 2 of the police forces started to get interested in taking the case forward, an instruction came round to them from ACPO saying, you will not prosecute these people. Now, that
Mhm.
is just utterly appalling.
Yeah.
There we go. That's what happens. But
Yeah.
luckily, we had out of the 300 attempts to get police to take action, 5 of them did move to the War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity unit at Scotland Yard.
Five
And
of them.
I think in uh, certainly 2 of them were taken forward by the police in that unit. I went to Belgravia police station and spent 15 hours with the detectives from that unit going through the evidence of the case against our leaders, Tony Blair, Jack Straw, Jeff Hoon, Lord Goldsmith, Gordon Brown, all the rest of them at the time, and the chiefs of the defence staff and others, civil servants in particular. And anyway, 15 hours of that, after about 10 hours of it, they realized, well, look, this is quite clear. This is what the law says. This is what has happened. That is a criminal offence and we have to pursue it. And so they passed it on to the Crown Prosecution Service to start a case against these people. But the Crown Prosecution Service, of course, being as corrupt or even more corrupt than the
Hmm.
police,
Hmm.
refused to do so. We got a letter from them eventually saying, no, we're not going ahead with the prosecution of Tony Blair and the others that you have reported on the grounds that you have not provided evidence of intent to commit genocide, intent to commit crimes against humanity, or intent to commit war crimes. Now, that doesn't apply. I mean, it's not for the witnesses, us, the ordinary people in the street, to prove intent. Even though I had pages and pages of proof of intent in the report that I did, they paid no attention to that at all. It's really for the Crown Prosecution Service to prove in court before a jury that Tony Blair intentionally committed genocide. I gave them examples of that. Perhaps a quick diversion into that. An example of Tony Blair and Jack Straw, who was the Foreign Secretary. Now, there was a debate in Parliament in March the 18th, 2003, when they debated whether or not to go to war with Iraq. And it was a long debate. good one. It was finished by Jack Straw, who said, "We've had a good debate tonight. We know there will be consequences for our decision. Some of our troops may be killed. So too will innocent Iraqi civilians. I urge you to vote with the government tonight." Now, that is proof positive of intent to commit genocide. He was intending to kill innocent Iraqi civilians,
Yeah.
not because they've done anything to us, but because of who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that's the sort of example of intent to commit genocide, which we'd put across to the police
Yeah.
and the Crown Prosecution Service. They just ignore it
Yeah.
completely.
It wasn't Starmer by any chance in the Crown prosecution.
Yes, it was.
It was right.
Typically, I mean,
Magnificent.
he's a war criminal of the worst kind. I mean, he was the one man
Magnificent.
who could have stopped the whole,
Yeah.
all the wars that have
Yeah.
taken place since then if he had
Yeah.
started a prosecution of Blair.
Yeah. And if he stepped in to do something about Jimmy Savile, he could have stopped a lot of suffering there. He could have brought him to justice as well, but he didn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
We've
yeah,
got
so much of
we've
it.
got the picture built. We've got the picture building about that man. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, overall, it's important that we keep the pressure on. Going back to the point about the company directors committing offences, it's not only our politicians who are committing offences, and we need to report them. And again, in Scotland, you can report your leading politicians because they know what's going on. They're constantly supporting the fact that the money goes into the government's consolidated fund at Westminster, and it is used in part for mass murder and genocide. So we can start to take some of the politicians to court, report them to the police, and then get the police to start criminal proceedings against the politicians
Yeah.
and also the company directors who are putting lots of money, sometimes, nearly £1 billion. The bank directors are putting more than £1 billion, not only in taxes, but also loaning the money to the government at interest
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
fight these wars.
Yeah.
So these are the people who really should be placed in court
Yeah.
for conduct ancillary to genocide.
Now, I think that if you were to be able to paint the picture and advertise this more broadly so that more company directors become aware of this, and you
Yeah,
show them this legal position, and you say to them that currently what you're doing is breaking the law. If you go down this road, you're not breaking the law, and therefore you will be safe. If
yeah.
you continue to do what you're doing, and there is a case that comes out against directors across the country, then you could be taken to court. Again, I think this is another genius strategy that would get people to do the honorable thing and to follow the process
Yeah.
to ensure that they don't end up in court.
Excellent, Gary. I'd love to work with you. I mean, I've been trying to sell these principles for 23 years, but unsuccessfully. But it's other people who can really we can if we can work together on this, then we can start to persuade one or two company directors to do it. Now, I have managed to do it with small businesses.
Mhm.
There's a small business that a hairdressing company that withheld PAYE and VAT and corporation tax last year in the financial year 2024 to 2025, April. They withheld £170,000 and were able to pay the PAYE back to their employees, 12 employees. So they were very pleased about it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Uh,
Fantastic.
so it can be done, and we've got about a dozen or so small companies doing it, but the really important ones are the big ones.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but I need help in doing that, and I'm
yeah,
very happy if you can be part of a group, I'm coming up to Scotland at some point, and we can work together on it and really pick one or two of the key people in Scotland who need to be told about this
Yeah,
and start something rolling in
yeah.
Scotland. I
Well, I
discovered
think,
the other day, for instance, the Weatherspoons, which does have some places in Scotland.
yeah,
Weatherspoons, as an organization in the hospitality field, pays last year £840 million in tax.
wow,
I mean, it's unbelievable, really, but 840. So we know of that 840, 10 to 15% will go to mass murder and genocide.
yeah,
So the directors of Weatherspoons need to know that they are contributing about 120 million pounds a year to mass murder and genocide.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
And
it's powerful, and this is where we get into the realm of there will be some directors out there who will be very open to this,
yeah,
and there will be others who are perhaps caught up in the more, let's just say they're more obedient to the system,
yes,
and therefore they might resist any calls for them to do this, for for a variety of different reasons. But also we've got what we've got here is that sometimes there are people who are connected in their alliances through secret societies, different things where particularly the big corporations, the multinationals,
yeah,
they are connected through this web of secret societies and committees and all that kind of stuff, where they're actually, if we think about the Bilderberg Group and other
yeah,
organizations like that, where they try to bring in the sort of other powerful, whether it's media, whether it's big multinationals across all different industries, to try to control those companies to get them to be supportive of these elitist special interest groups. They become part of that, and it's almost like an ego thing. They say, "Come in and be part of this. This is where all the high flyers meet to talk about how we're going to you know evolve the world from here and how you can benefit as an individual and as a company owner." To get behind these ideas. This is where these special interest groups work very, very cleverly to do that.
yes, yeah.
However, and we know that there are some people that may be aligned in those ways, but also there'll be others that aren't. And I think if we can target, like you say, who's to say we don't know, I don't know anything about the guy that is the main guy at Weatherspoons. I think he's been in the media at different times down the years, maybe with a little bit of controversy surrounding him and some of his
Yeah.
things that he was doing. I can't remember immediately off the top of my head what those were, but there were certainly things going on with that company.
Yeah.
And but who's
An
who's to say?
advantage of that is that in Weatherspoons, for the last 10 years, he's been complaining about the unfairness of VAT.
Yeah, well, there you
Now,
go.
it's not only unfair, it's illegal, and he
Yeah.
doesn't realize that.
Yeah, well, there we go. So there's another potential avenue into that conversation. Uh,
Yes,
so I think it's great, and I think one thing that I know that people will be wanting to hear, and that is if I do this as an individual, will I be at risk of
yeah.
getting myself into trouble, of prosecution, of my credit rating being impacted, of so on and so on? What's your take on that, Chris?
I think it's a valid fear. I mean, the point about it is that we've got big state on top of us, and they can pull all sorts of crap all the time into us. But there's points I want to make are, first of all, this is entirely based on criminal law and the international as well as the domestic criminal law against funding war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. And they have not, since I've been doing this, challenged that in court. And if they do, then they will lose. It's their laws. They are committing the criminal offences, therefore they don't take that issue to court. So one can always depend on, providing you have really put all the issues in that declaration and deed of trust on the table, and you make sure you understand all of them, then you are in a very good position of saying, at no stage do I want to support mass murder,
Yeah,
particularly of children. And we've murdered about a million children in the last 22 years in
shocking,
Afghanistan,
shocking.
Iraq, Libya, Syria, and so on. And it is utterly horrendous. And, that's 30,000 children a year we are murdering. We are paying for the murder of 30,000 children a year. And the situation in Gaza at the moment is it's just horrendous. So anyway, going back to people's fears, be aware of that. Now, the second thing I would suggest is act as a group as well as individually.
Hmm.
It's very important that all these people who believe that this is the right thing to do, we could set up a taxpayers' trust for Scottish taxpayers, if you like. Scottish Taxpayers Trust. And everybody joins in that. We can then use the money we're saving in tax to pay for really effective legal advice and help and to persuade the different professions, the legal profession and the accountancy profession, to start to uphold and enforce the law. Once they start to do that, the whole thing will tip very rapidly
Yeah,
into our lap, and we
yeah,
will advance things.
yeah. I think so. I think particularly targeting the corporates, because if you can get a bunch of the corporates there that starts to make a material impact on the money that's flowing into the tax revenue, then there's going to have to be a reaction from the government in terms of, hold on a minute, what's going on here? And
Yeah.
when that happens, we need to be ready with a set of demands that are similar to the conditions, the legal conditions in the trust, that really does hold them, get them over a barrel and say, these are the things that you need to meet. And I think this is where we get into a whole other realm altogether of how we can really create some incredible change within the governmental system to
Yes.
to restore ethics and moral principles that are we've got oversight of, a very tight oversight on, from civil civil run boards, if you like, where the governments are put back in the position that they should be in because they've got far too much power, and politicians have become too powerful, there's too much, fame and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. We need to get people back to the place where the people have got the power and the politicians are beholden to the people.
Absolutely.
And we've not got a system there where actually the governments are basically scrutinizing themselves. We need the scrutiny to come from completely non-connected
Independent.
groups, independent groups that are coming from the different districts and regions of the country. And these are people who have been nominated by their community to be the ones to hold the government to account. And
Yeah.
this is something that can happen over time. I think people just get lost in the size of it, the magnitude of it, and they just can't see how we can do it. I don't see it that way. I very much believe that we have the power to do anything that we want, and if we can get people together in enough numbers, we can create fantastic things. And and as you say, if we can get to the point where the tipping point starts to come with this strategy, then change is inevitable.
Yes.
But then what we have to do, as I say, is we have to be ready with a very, very intelligently put together set of demands of, these are the demands. This is how government is going to evolve and change, and we want this to be done this way. And we can make those demands such that the vast majority of people would support it.
I agree with that completely, Gary. That's very important. And I think there's one thing I'd like to add to it. It's not just a matter of numbers as well. Um, a small group can change it completely. There's a piece of information I discovered that the Advocate General for Scotland recently said that the government will, without question, uphold international law. And I thought that when she said that, I thought, marvelous. Well, that's the first time I've heard anybody in government actually say that. Um, and together with the Lord Advocate in Holyrood and the others, I think you have three women in the key roles in law. Uh, it may be possible to start something there. And I would suggest that a small group prosecuting one or two key political or business leaders, getting a prosecution going through Police Scotland and through putting the whole case out clearly on the internet so that everybody can see the arguments pro and for prosecution and defense for those two people. Just one court case successfully achieving, conviction for conduct ancillary to genocide under the law of Scotland
Hmm.
would have a massive effect both on business and politics everywhere.
Yeah,
And so I think we need both things to go along in together. We
yeah,
need a corporate trust with as many people as possible withholding taxes, and we need some real action in terms of prosecuting key funders as well as key organizers and war criminals.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking, obviously, this conversation is going to continue outside of this,
Yeah,
this session we're doing today. We're just getting started. But in terms of the concern that I have regarding people
yeah,
and their lack of action behind things that in their own mind might seem too overwhelming, too complicated, too much of a task to do. This is where I've got concerns because I think people, a lot of the time, they need to be spoon-fed with information.
yeah,
They almost need to have people kind of walking them through the process so that they know exactly what they're doing. And I think that's something that can be provided because you've already done that with your on your website. And but is there another way that we can try to, I guess, corral people into some kind of a community that does do the hand holding, it does take them through the process, and help them to do it, and then we can actually keep a track of the number of people that are going through the process
yeah,
because we've got them funneled through some kind of a route where we know exactly how many people have done this. And we can start to see the numbers accumulating, and those numbers accumulating can then be shared with the
yes,
wider people to say, hey guys, we're now up to 5,000 people that have done this. We're now up to 10,000. We're now up to,
yeah,
and then all of a sudden people are going to go, oh my God, I better get on and do this too, because it sounds like it's
absolutely.
really, everybody's getting behind it.
That's exactly what's needed, Gary. And I'm afraid there's so many things I concentrate on. I'm useless at that. I need other people to help with it and to push it forward and so on. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I think it could make a big effect in Scotland if it is linked to the independence movement.
Mm.
The way in which the vote for independence was manipulated
Mm.
in 10 years ago, whenever it
Yeah. Yeah.
was
2014.
appalling. There were more people voting for independence than there were against, and there was evidence of corruption and fraud there.
Yeah.
But I think once they realize that the money is fundamental. Taxes are fundamental to stopping what is going on, and they can get the Scottish government to withhold all taxes currently being paid from Scotland from Westminster and the revenue and customs in Scotland, understanding that they have to stop the taxes going to Westminster. I think it would really help the independence movement enormously because you have so many advantages as a nation that we don't have in England and Wales. You have your own Bank of Scotland and your own legal system and so on, which
Mm.
can support this if it is steered correctly as part of the strategy. So I'm completely with you there that we need a different approach to try to get people on board and show how the numbers are increasing. And I think one of the ways to do that is to get one or two large accountancy firms to take this on and to understand that when they advise their clients to pay tax, they are committing criminal offences
Yeah,
and they should be advising their clients to put their taxes in trust.
yeah, yeah,
And then they have client accounts, they have the systems in place to handle this effectively. And obviously, they can take a small percentage or a percentage of the taxes saved to pay for their efforts. And so I think things like that would be a great way forward.
yeah, yeah. And as it happens, I'm connected with some different networks, business networks.
Right.
I've attended some networking events, and a member of one particular networking event that has got a number of accountancy firms in it, represented in it,
Right.
and also a number of business owners that are also in there, funnily enough. So, so this could be a really good testing ground for
Absolutely.
what we've just been talking about. So I think at the moment within this one particular network, there's north of 100 businesses represented in there. Um,
Well, they'll be certainly interested, won't they? And
Absolutely.
I'm coming up to Scotland, so I'll be very happy to. We could run a joint affair, a joint presentation
Mm,
with them
mm.
about this, and see if we can get some of them on board.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's got great potential. And I'm just trying to think if there's any other questions before we wrap up today, because it's been a great conversation. I appreciate your time, Chris. I really support what you're doing. I think it's coming from a really good place, and this is important. It has to come from the heart. It has to come
Yes,
from a compassionate place where we can see the suffering that's going on in the world, and we want to try to do something about that.
yes,
And that is a compassionate act. And sometimes we have to do things that are difficult in order to get the results that we really strive for. And this is not an easy process. It's not an easy journey to do this because we're talking about systemic change and and also a mindset change for people to get on board these ideas. But I,
absolutely.
but I fundamentally believe we can do it if we get the right people stepping forward to say, I'm ready to support, I'm ready to help. And the sky's the limit in terms of where it could go.
Yes,
So I think, I think maybe the final question here is that, people that are let's say people are working within the public sector, and let's say that this starts to really pick up pace. Now, obviously, the public sector are paid out of the revenue that comes in from taxes as well. What about people out there that would be, getting concerned and saying, "Oh my goodness, how would I be paid if this starts to accelerate and whatever?" What would you say? Because I've got an idea of what I would say to them, but what would you say to these people?
well, this is where we need to be quite clear that we're not just making this money in order to benefit ourselves individually or so on. but we need to start to put it into effective community development.
Mm.
And we've got to steer that in a way that everybody involved feels is the right way forward. So, as I say, we're trying to set up structures that will ease this process. We talk about it some other time, but it multi-stakeholder, limited liability, community platform co-ops are a very good structural way of helping people work together to take over their local community activities.
Yeah.
And if we do it through that way, and we have different businesses involved and different individuals and so on, pulling it all together, I think we have the framework for creating a better society.
Yeah, I agree. And fundamentally, where this would go, it would be bringing back the power and the responsibility within the communities,
Yeah,
taking away some of the power that's sitting within councils, and obviously taking away some of the power that sits within government, and over time shrinking those entities. Because when something
absolutely.
becomes so big, so bloated, and starts to accumulate more power and control over finances and all these type of things, corruption is inevitable.
Yes,
So if we can shrink that over time, bring that back into the communities, but we would have to do something where, people would have to, uh, because the way that the world, the way that the world works currently is that people have to earn money in order to pay their bills.
yeah,
And that's always a stress for people, so okay, so if I'm going to start to take on more responsibility within my community, how do I pay my bills? I'm currently working and so on and so on. But these are things that would emerge over time in ways that we could actually, the people who really wanted to step in and have a more a more sort of prominent role within the community activities would need to be supported in some way through the money that's coming in for,
absolutely.
for the betterment of the community. So that those that still wanted to just continue to do the jobs that they're currently doing can do so as well. But we would want it to get everybody involved in some way, participating, so that we really reconnect communities in a way that perhaps we used to many moons ago, which has been
Yeah.
completely scattered and become more separate as time has gone on.
Absolutely. The community development is really the fundamental process underpinning all of this that
Mm.
will take us into a better place.
Yeah,
So, yes, and I think we ought to have another session on that at some point, Gary, because there are so many things to be said relating to that.
yeah,
And as you say, it's systemic change. You have to understand the system and how it works in order to make successful changes.
yeah.
And there are very simple changes that can have very massive effects.
Yeah, yeah. And if we see this, I guess my final point on this is that if we see that the piece that you're championing, there are other organizations that have been established probably out of the sort of COVID era that are now doing really good work in terms of trying to educate people, particularly up in Scotland and down in other parts of the UK as well, is trying to identify these companies where there's alignment on
Yeah,
principles and values, and saying, okay, how can we support one another
yeah,
to basically to support one another's work in a way that we can get it out to more people. And
yes,
that could be that people get the education about this aspect, they get educated about certain other aspects. We've got the natural health communities that are all now aligning and working
yeah,
together to try and get the word out there about what does it really mean to be healthy, and how do we live in a way that gives the body what it needs, rather than some of the stuff that we've previously been told that actually is quite harmful for the body over time. So there's a lot of interconnected strands to this. That if,
yes,
if if we do it right, then it could really be a massive force for good.
I agree completely.
Yeah,
Let's do
wonderful.
it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, for anybody that's watching this right to the end, please start to get on board. Please warm to these ideas. Please get ready to take action and get behind it and be part of this change, because I do believe that it's one of our best opportunities to create the change that we seek. So yeah, thank you for agreeing to do this interview, Chris. I've really enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you very much, Gary, and we'll work together to move it forward.
Talk soon. Thank you.
All the best.